Dear Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share. I hope that all this doesn't sound Greek to you. The rapid introduction of ICT into many areas of our lives, at home, in school, and in work, is leading to a review of skills needed to participate in society today. Initially, the debate was over skills required to use new technologies. That discussion advanced to looking at how broader skills and competencies requirements were affected by ICT. More recently, it has been suggested that we need to fundamentally rethink what is meant by literacy and communication. We now know that it is not the tool, but its use that will transform the school. We also know that we must proceed with caution. The task of integrating ICT in education, in everyday educational routine, is certainly not easy. In the last 5 years, a series of training programs were carried out in Greece. They were addressed mainly to teachers of secondary education and aimed at the application and exploitation of technology in schools, not as an autonomous subject, but as part of the individual subject of the curriculum. So, what we know after 5 years? We know that a great number of educators did not hesitate to admit in their interviews that they consider the decision to change their teaching methods a very difficult one. The innovation of ICT and its integration in the curriculum requires careful planning and the relevant preparation, while at the same time demanding a large amount of time on the part of the teacher. The vast majority of educators that participated in experimental teachings in the school lab required insistently the presence of a second teacher in class so that student group work would be facilitated. They also asked for timetable flexibility so that a 2-hour period would be available for each session. Quite a few educators remain observers, facing the whole task with skepticism. However, the longer one is involved in the process of activity planning with the support of new technologies, the more one discovers methods of refreshment of one's teaching practice. Several teacher trainers suggested that over-rigid assessment systems were preventing the development of new curricula to develop digital literacy. We have to admit that curricula frameworks are far too restrictive. Greek and international bibliography on the change of the attitude of education towards teaching methods all converge that teachers in general do not change easily either their way of teaching or their instructive and pedagogic habits. Changing in this respect requires a long time. That is to say, teachers need to be able to see and be convinced for correctness and effectiveness of new teaching methods before they put it in practice. I believe we all agree that the new types of text, such as the hypertext or the multimodal text, require different reading approaches. Today, texts communicated with us in many ways, with their fonts, with the images that frame them. The comparison of two instructive handbooks, one of the past decade and a modern one, will disclose the difference. A dry text today is repulsive for students who are bombarded by images in their everyday life. Text multimodality is an aspect investigated nowadays by experts in the fields of education and communication. The widespread use of images, not only in advertising but more generally in new technologies of communication, showcases the demand for student training in the reading of these new texts. Due to rapid developments of technology, the text has evolved in our days to incorporate audiovisual stimuli. Multimodality stands out as a fundamental parameter of each text, and we teachers must provide our students with the tools that will help them decipher the messages that surround them. The visual message is addressed to a completely naive and hence vulnerable recipient. we have often come across written texts accusing the students of lack of critical spirit. The question, however, arises, what have we done for the visual education of our students? It is not possible for education to direct the visual messages, but it can work on the filters of their perception. The convergence of technologies, telephone, television, computers, allow us the evolution of language and puts into question our fundamental beliefs for the role of written expression in teaching. The criteria that we used for text analysis are no more applicable. The traditional rules of paragraph syntax do not help us anymore. How can we analyze an electronic text, which limits are no longer distinguishable? Why shouldn't the text on the Parthenon, which also includes a photograph of the monument, offer students the possibility to surf all the modern temples of the Hellenic area, as well as to compare them with the temples of Greece through the centuries? There are researchers who claim that as images tend to dominate, the problems of a universal language that presuppose globalization through the neutralization of communication are blunted. On the other hand, however, let us not forget that the perception of a picture is often the sum of our cultural values. A common misapprehension among educators is that software will replace their teaching. Those who have somehow dealt with ICT know that such software does not exist. What exists is software that can support the educational process. The word processor, for example, can support the teaching of a paragraph in a subject of essay writing. Seldom, however, has it been used in schools involved in pilot programs, perhaps because it does not have a glossy paper wrapping. I believe that all teachers will agree that the transformational power of writing during the educational process is overlooked in the Greek school. I mean that we are mainly interested in the results, the work of a student in its final form, and we pay no attention to the transformation of a text through its editing stages. Peer evaluation is interesting for students. Rewriting is an activity that takes place throughout the writing process. Changes happen every minute and at no cost. The text is fluid and changes are not time-consuming. The ease with which we make changes liberates students who begin to focus on the concepts being discussed. We also have discovered that our students got most excited when they could design their own web quests to answer their own questions. They were far more interested in the results and had to think much harder about the explanations for what occurred than if they were following directions from a book. As teachers, we learned a great deal during this process of trial and error, which continues to affect decisions we make today. The integration of ICT in the teaching of history involves a series of changes in the methods and tools of school history. It is not an exaggeration to speak for the creation of new learning environment where the transfer of information is replaced by its quest. Many lesson plans on our official educational portal are web quests. Teachers strive to provide students with the ability to seek historical information in specific websites.